The Bible study for today, at this new time, for at least for this season of Advent. So just so you know, we'll be going today. We'll probably go till about 11:15, 11:20, so that way I can make sure I think I got everything set up for service, and mostly the meal.
The crowd that comes.
Yeah, we'll see. So I don't know. I never know with Advent. So sometimes we get a lot of people, and sometimes we don't. So we'll just see how it goes. So, and so yeah, they'll do the Advent service, and then we'll have a meal with chili, and I have sandwiches as well too. You can make your own sandwiches. So that's sort of the fare for today. Our church signs are: if the devil throws you to the wolves, return leading the pack against him. If at first you don't succeed, you're about average. The right thing and the hard thing are usually the same thing.
What's more?
The right thing and the hard thing are usually the same thing.
Oh, okay.
God's stock market will always profit. Prophet. In happy moments, praise God. In difficult moments, seek God. In quiet moments, trust God. In every moment, thank God. And then sometimes people with the worst past can create the best futures. So again, sometimes people with the worst past can create the best futures. So those are our signs for this week, and go around and see how everybody's doing. They're good. For myself, I made it home last night just fine. The roads were a little icky, but nothing too bad. So,
But you're saying, I had every right to stay home, right?
absolutely, because I should probably never even drove out here in the first place. So,
Right.
Well, you guys got a lot more snow over there than what you even.
Cottage Grove, not so much.
Oh,
I think we only got 6 inches.
one of the aides at 4 o'clock or 2 o'clock over at the care center lives in Wausau. Drives
Oh.
over here from Wausau.
From
Yeah.
Wausau?
Mhm. And she said she didn't hit snow till she got almost up to 94 on 29. It was raining all the way, she said, and then all
Oh, it's
of a sudden,
raining. Ooh.
They didn't have no snow. Eau Claire only got about 1.5 inches of snow.
Okay.
They said that Avery didn't get any snow. Now, whether that's true or not.
Well, it was a narrow band.
Yeah.
We got lucky.
Yeah, we were right in the thick of it.
Yeah.
But she said, well, it was raining when she left for work, and it takes
Wow.
an hour to drive over, she said.
But next Tuesday, we have community supper. There's a storm coming.
Is there?
There always
What
is.
do we do
Yeah.
then?
You guys make the call.
See how bad it is.
Oh, it's a free dinner, they'll come in.
But
I don't know.
we always have we always have weather on community supper. It never fails. I think, like I said,
Snowblower,
yeah,
me.
you gonna snowblow us out? Well, I think the other thing
I
is,
did the driveway, the red, snowblower, I ran out of gas.
well, I was gonna say, I think of all the community suppers that we do, I always remember we always have to. We end up having to salt the parking lot or sand it. So
He is going to have it sanded, so.
yeah. So I think that's.
The
people
like the challenge.
I know. So we'll just see. But like I said, you guys make the final
I
call.
didn't really hear.
So
Yeah.
I go by the
and you can always tell me no.
porch.
So
5 to 6.
Yeah, 5 to 6.
Well, we'll see you next Monday.
yeah, Tuesday.
Falls, I think they're-
Well, yeah, but,
Is it supposed to snow on Monday or is it supposed to snow on Tuesday?
well, we should know by Monday.
Oh, that's true.
Last night, Channel
That's
4,
true.
that Hudson had 7.8.
Yeah, it's that time of year. I guess we're gonna get snow now. So today we are in the book of Esther, if I remember correctly.
Is this the reading that we got on Sunday?
This is.
If I read, that's just what I gotta read?
You had a few words, yeah.
It's not too bad.
It's not bad.
Mordecai
Well,
and,
it's
Yeah, there's another.
Esther, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
1 to 17?
Yeah.
You're gonna make me read it all?
It's 1 to 7, isn't it?
No, 1 to
1 to
17.
17.
It's the whole chapter.
Oh, sure enough, 1 to 17.
It's the whole chat, or,
It's the whole chapter 4.
yeah.
Well, she's got to get her money's worth, Wally. And I'll give you this too when we're done. So you'll have it.
All right, well, I've been practicing.
Good. So you're going to start us off then today.
But no. This isn't the same words that the modern Bible has,
You
because
can-
this is an old,
You can use whatever
this is my
words.
mother's Bible.
You can use whatever words you want.
They use a lot of thee and thou in
I
here.
think-
That's all right.
But my Bible that I always had at home, the print is too small, I can't read it.
Well, he'll have it printed bigger.
Yeah, he got a big print.
We can
Yeah, that'll be nice.
we can do a little bigger too if you need
There's
it.
some
So.
words, but that, I just glance over them, that's all.
And even got a pronunciation key for you too.
Oh,
So
There's only a couple on
yeah, there's only 3. So
Very big chapter, so it's easy to.
so who wants to read chapter 4 verses 1 through 5?
One
I'll
more.
read it and get us started.
Excuse me,
Okay.
you go ahead.
That's Mordecai, isn't it?
You're right,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's pretty good. When
See?
Mordecai learned all that had been done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went out into the midst of the city, wailing with a loud and bitter cry. He went up to the entrance of the king's gate, for no one might enter the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, wherever the king's command and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting and weeping and lamenting, and most of them lay in sackcloth and ashes. Is that far enough? or
No,
what?
keep going. You got 2 more verses left.
Oh, when Esther's maids and her eunuchs came and told her the queen was deeply distressed, she sent garments to clothe Mordecai so that he might take off his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther called for, I don't know who he is, one of the king's eunuchs who had been appointed to tend her, and ordered him to go to Malachi to learn what this was and why it was.
All right.
Hatak.
No, you're good. You're good. That's so
Uh,
6. So you're gonna have to read the whole thing on Sunday, but you only have to do 4 to 5. So that's
Oh,
good.
okay.
So
I'm done?
you're done for right now. For right now. So 6 through 10.
Huh?
No, I asked you somebody else to do 6 through 10.
I gotta read some more?
No. No, I'm asking.
So okay, no, he didn't know how to pronounce it.
They have it as Hathach.
Hathach
Yep.
went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money that Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict of their annihilation or something, which had been published in Susa, to show to Esther and explain it to her. And he told him to instruct her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai,
All
All
right.
the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that if any man or woman goes to the king inside the inner court without being called, there is but one law, to be put to death, except the one to whom the king holds out the golden scepter, so that he may live. But as for me, I have not been called to come in to the king these 30 days. And they told Mordecai what Esther had said. Then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, "Do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. and who knows whether you will not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, "Go gather all the Jews to be found in Susa and hold a fast on my behalf, and do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my young women will also fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." Mordecai then went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him.
All right. So
We should all have been booing when we heard Haman's.
there we go.
Yes.
That's what they do at the Feast of Purim?
Purim. Yep.
Purim.
Yeah. So so who likes to give us sort of a brief overview of the story of Esther? If anybody knows, does anybody know the story of Esther?
Well, I know that Esther was a Jew,
There you go.
kind of like Moses. I any connection, but she was a Jew, but she was taken care of by Mordecai, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when her parents died, and so they didn't know. They thought she was one of them.
Right. So she's married to. So at this time, I believe it's the Persian king.
Persian.
I think it's the king. I'm trying to remember what the king of this particular thing is. He is. I remember. I want to say he was the Persian king.
Ahasuerus.
Yeah. And so at the beginning, I just wanted to make sure that I'm not telling you wrong, but I could have sworn it was the Persian king. He's also known as Xerxes as well too. So, yep, ruler of the Persian Empire. Perfect. Okay, so the story begins with Esther, who gets chosen to be the next queen because the previous queen didn't listen to what the king had said, and so he's like, "I'm getting rid of you. You're not listening to me." He actually makes an edict to say wives have to listen to their husbands, which I thought that's pretty sad if he's got to do that. I mean, he's obviously not talking to his wife very well. So there's a search for the next queen. Esther gets selected to be the next queen, and the people there do not know that she's Persian. So they have this. So next they have this, and Mordecai around this time too helps prevent an assassination for the king. So the king's really happy for this. Thank you for saving my life. And they never properly celebrate Mordecai doing this. So, and so then Haman doesn't like Mordecai because Mordecai doesn't bow to him. Mordecai's like, yeah, you can take that somewhere else. And Haman's like, no, you need to bow. And Mordecai's, no, I don't have to do that. And I worship God. I don't bow to you. And so Haman gets upset by that, and then he tricks the king into signing this edict about killing all the Jews. And he does this by not telling the king. He says there's a group of people that aren't obeying your law. Shouldn't you think we should take care of them? And the king's like, oh yeah, we should be doing that. And so that's where our story sort of stumbles on today, where Haman sort of slides the paper over to Mordecai. Guess what? Guess what's coming? You guys are all dead. I'm going to take all your money. I'm going to take all the wealth that you guys own from all the Jewish folks. And Mordecai is really upset. So that's what we read today. He's upset. He talks to Esther, and then what does he have Esther do? What's sort of the next step? What does Esther
She's
Go in
supposed to.
and plead with the king.
Yeah, go in and plead with the king. Yeah, let's. So then she's supposed to go see the king and say, you know, can we do something about this, or so as you think about this, why is Esther hesitant to go talk to the king? What's the rule in place that makes it hard to go see the king?
If she's not invited, she could be killed.
Yeah. So if you're not invited, you're dead. So, and that's even for the queen. So it doesn't. There's no exceptions. And so I think that's the interesting thing about that. So.
Julie, I meant,
I think royalty did that to
Julie?
prevent assassinations.
Right.
Yeah.
So they did that to, probably prevent someone just showing up unforeseen. And so, well, the funny part is, how long ago had it been since the king saw Esther?
30 days.
30 days. How often would you like to see your husband or your spouse? Every 30 days, right? But that's sort of where I thought it was pretty funny. I was like, really? It's been 30 days since, it's not like been a day. It's not been 2 days. It's been like 30. It's been a month since she's seen the king. So I'm like, well, obviously they have I don't know how you have a relationship like that, but there you go. So,
Esther was always afraid of being found out too.
Right. Yeah, she didn't know how the king would handle that.
Yeah.
And so now, so we see that Mordecai basically says, you need to do this. And Esther's like, I don't know if I can do this. And Mordecai is like, you need to do this. You need to do this for us. Because it's not just, if you don't do anything, what's going to happen to us as a people. And that's going to be on you for not doing anything. And Esther's like, okay, I will go. And then we'll see what happens. And so, so what do you think happens? What do you think happens after Esther? So Esther walks. I'll tell you this one. Esther walks towards the king. What do you think happens? Does the king? So the king drops his scepter down, which says, "You can come forward. We will not kill you." So Esther gets to come forward. She tells the king about what is happening, and the king is very upset. He's like, why did this happen and stuff like that. But the bad thing is he can't change the edict. So sort of what happens at this particular point in time, once the king makes a ruling, he can't unrule the change. So, and during this time as well too, Haman is sort of, so interspecs with this. So this guy Haman, who does not like the Jewish folks at all, he started building a rampart with a gallows on it to hang Mordecai. And he's pointing to Mordecai, hey, you know what we're doing out there. You guys are, it's just any day now you're going to be hung. And so the interesting things too is at this time, as during this time when the king, right before king finds out from Esther what Haman's done, Haman and the king are talking, and the king remembers that Mordecai had saved his life. And he said, we haven't done anything for Mordecai. Why don't we do something for him? But in an Abbot of Costello routine, the king really doesn't tell Haman who he's talking about. He's like, hey, I got this guy that we need to honor. And Haman's thinking, well, I'm a guy. I think you need to honor me. So, and so they have, like I said, this Abbot and Costello routine where they don't really say who they're talking about until the end. Where so the king's like, well, what should we do? And Haman's like, you should have some nice clothes, thinking that he wanted some nice clothes. And he's like, oh yeah, and he should ride on the king's horse too. Take the Lamborghini out for a little while for that. And the king's like, oh, that's great. Let's write that down. This is great. And Haman's like, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to get some really good clothes. I'm going to have a feast for me. I'm going to get to ride this horse. And then the king goes, yep, and let Mordecai know we'll do that for him. And Haman's like, what? Wait a minute here. What do you mean? And so So you have that sort of funny part again during the text as well too. So finally, so afterwards, then you have the king had rewrote. So the king rewrites his edict saying that the Jewish people can defend themselves from being attacked, and so the Jewish folks just do exactly that. They kill all the people who try to kill them, and Haman ends up being hung for what he did, and then a lot of people who didn't like the Jews were killed, and so from that comes the festival of Purim. So this is sort of a story to describe how this festival for the Jewish people came about. So there's one really interesting note about this. How many times does the word God appear in the book of Esther? None.
No.
0. Can you name me the other book in the Bible where you don't see a reference to God besides Esther? There's one other book in the Bible that does not have any mention of God in it at all.
Lamentations.
Nope. There's 2 books in the Bible that don't actually mention, and they're both in the Old Testament, but they don't mention God at all.
Jonah.
Nope.
Obadiah.
Nope. Song of Songs
Oh.
Oh.
does not mention God at all. So, or the words Yahweh. So I thought the other interesting thing too is that they went through and they looked in the Hebrew for Yahweh throughout the whole book of Esther. And what they do is they look to see where the words could potentially form to. Sometimes they sort of subtly put it in the text, where they have like 2 words. If you join them together, would sound the word for Yahweh. And if you remember right, the reason why. So how many vowels does Yahweh have in it?
Is it none?
None. Yes. So so why do you think they wrote that originally? Why is there no vowels in the word? I mean, we have to say Yahweh, but I mean, why do you think they did that?
It was too holy to say or
Right.
to even write.
Correct. So they don't even want you to pronounce it. So that's the reason why there's no vowels in it. So you're like, you can't pronounce it. Exactly. They don't want you to pronounce it. So yeah. So that's sort of the whole story of Esther, all in a nutshell. But there's some really interesting things about Esther, because if you read the book of Esther in a Catholic Bible, it will not be the same as reading it in a Protestant Bible. There's some additions. Let me see if I can find those real quick. But yeah, there's some additions to the text. And like I said, so you'll see, and you'll see this too in the Protestant Bible. They say if you have one that talks about the Apocrypha, they will say that these are the new writings. And most of the reading out of the Catholic lectionary goes through all the new parts of Esther. So here, let me give you some additions to what they. So this was added to the book of Esther somewhere along the line. So there's an opening prologue that describes a dream had by Mordecai. The second thing it adds is the contents of the decree against the Jews, so you can actually hear what the decree is. And then this newer edition, there actually is prayers for God's intervention offered by Mordecai and by Esther. There's an expansion of the scene in which Esther appears before the king with a mention of God's intervention, a copy of the decree in favor of the Jews, a passage in which Mordecai interprets the dream from the prologue in terms of the events that followed, and colophon amended to the end, which reads, in the 4th year of the reign of Ptolemeth and Cleopatra, Demetrius, who said that he was priest and a Levite, and he thought this was going to be bad. You don't have to read this, Wally. And his son Polyphus brought to Egypt the preceding letter about Purim, which they said was authentic, and has been translated by Lushamas, son of Polytith, one of the residents of Jerusalem. You don't have to do that part. That's the addition. So But yeah, and surprise, surprise, Martin Luther thought that he was a critic of that edition. And he was not even happy with the original Hebrew version as well either. So Luther was not a big fan of Esther. So I think it's because he didn't like it that there wasn't a lot of talk about God and Jesus and stuff like that. So there is a mention, people have talked about a mention of God in this particular text. And it's actually in a part that we've read that there might be a sort of a mention of God. What part would that be? So it's in the text that we just read. And let's see. I'll tell you it's later.
Verse 14.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in the later part of the text. So yeah, for if you keep silent at such a time, Mordecai says this, for if you keep silent at such a time as this, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another quarter. I don't know, I always think of, I don't know if you've ever watched The Empire Strikes Back, where they said, Luke says, or Ben Kenobi says, Luke was our last hope, and Yoda says there's another. It's sort of like that sort of allusion in this part of the text, that there's somebody else that deliverance will come from, though they don't name it, but that a lot of scholars say what's really going on there is they're saying that if Esther doesn't act, God will act in a different way. But I would make the argument that God is acting through Esther. So,
Otherwise, why would it be in the Bible?
great question. Why is this in the Bible?
I mean, Esther tricked, or I wouldn't say tricked everybody, but all of her life she was under this threat of people finding out that she was really a Jew.
Yeah.
And what might happen to her.
Yeah.
And family.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, so and then here's one that makes it even funner. Why did they put it for Advent? Why is this an Advent text this week?
Yeah, right.
So what does this have to do with Advent? I'm taking notes, so you better have something good. Why would this be an Advent text? Or like Louise was saying too, why would we even include this in the Bible? Because it doesn't talk about God so much.
The fasting for 3 days is a waiting time or prayer time.
Yeah.
So that Esther can just be in communication with God, to be in conversation with God, and give her the strength to do what she has to do.
Yeah.
We waited 30 days before she saw her husband. Yeah.
So I think that's why maybe for Advent, and
Yeah.
just that God's sovereign plan is going to happen, and he has put things in place. I mean, Hathash's plan, the decree, that was Haman. Haman's decree that he got together gave the Jews a long period of time before they were going to all be executed. I mean, that was one thing set in place.
Yeah.
So they had time then, after the king changed the decree, that they could fight back, that they could gather their armies, and I mean, it just, the whole
God's
thing
plan
is just
is there.
God's plan comes about in all these different steps.
Right.
And something that we can remember today, that God is still in control despite how bad things look.
Yeah, especially in that particular situation too. If you think about it, they were going to be, the whole Jewish race was going to be wiped out. You know, and into that, God is still able to act. You know, even though they were all concerned. So,
What piano am I going to use?
whatever one you want to.
Where is the one that's out here? I mean, not the electronic one that we had here. There's only the one that's out of tune.
Okay, I'll bring the other one in.
Where is it?
Well, this is the one in the worship area
Okay.
because we don't have the other one anymore.
Keyboard?
That's the keyboard, yeah.
Could it also be a precursor of Jesus in that in this story, God uses Esther to save the Jewish people,
Mhm.
whereas Jesus comes to save all the nations rather than just the Jews.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good one too. Yeah. Yeah. So that's. But like I said, it's always interesting when they take a text that because I remember we did this over summer. We did this for summer Bible study, and I thought that was interesting to just do that. But to look at it in terms of a festival like Advent, how to take that and look at it. I think it's interesting to always look at the text because the text can mean a lot of different things depending on what time of year, what stuff is going on. So, any other questions about this text?
Who wrote this text?
Who wrote the text?
Yeah.
Good question. Let's see if I have. I can tell you right now, there's probably going to be some controversy about who the author is, because every time we do this,
Mine just says unknown.
yeah, it's usually dated back to the 4th century BCE. Yeah, they don't. It's unknown. So the so the original Hebrew scripture is 4 BCE. So the addition to the text came around the late 2nd to early 1st century BCE. So at this time they were taking the Hebrew scriptures and turning them into Greek. So there was the Greek Bible. Does anybody know what the Greek Bible's name was? Septuagint. So, yep. So you have that. But yeah, so those are the. So it's interesting, like I said. So if you pull out a Catholic version of the Bible and you read Esther, you'll notice a lot of differences between that and the Protestant version. So, be that for what you want. But it just sort of shows you how sometimes Scripture. Well, even if you look at the Gospel of Mark, Mark has a different ending originally than what it did. So some scribes were looking through Esther, I bet, and we're trying to say, well, how do we describe the events a little better for people so they can see the what is that? To see what's going on more, to get them to understand the full context. So, all right. Well, any other questions at all? Otherwise, I think we'll.
One of my footnotes I found interesting because the date that Haman picked for all the Jews to be killed was the day before Passover,
Oh, okay.
their biggest festival. So,
Yeah. So that. Yeah, it's just like Gene was sort of saying was it's interesting that as much as
it says,
yeah, we don't know what's going on. God has a plan, and God takes stuff that can be really horrible and changes it into something that can be good. So even though we can't see that, even though Mordecai couldn't see that, even though Esther couldn't see that, and the end of the time, this time which was, and I think in some sense you can look at this as an Advent text as well too, because when times looks the darkest is when you actually see the light. So, it's always darkest before the dawn, is that they say. So I wonder if this story does a real good job of doing that. So, all right. Well, like I said, we'll get done a little earlier today, just so I can make sure to have make sure I got all my ducks in a row for service. So, because because I keep forgetting stuff, and I keep thinking, oh yeah, I should have brought that. Oh yeah, I should have brought that. So.
Well, thank you all for coming to Bible study today. At this point in time, I invite you to pray. Pray about what's on your heart and mind right now. If you'd like to send that and have us pray for this during Bible study, send me a text, an email, call the office. You can put it in the comment section of the video below as well, too. Just let us know how we can pray for you and support you. Well, I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you in the next Bible study.